Hello everyone, how are you doing today? Is everything okay, or perhaps experiencing challenges? If things are not going as expected, remember the saying that life is never flat. This means that in life, there will only sometimes be smooth sailing. Even though things may feel messy at times, and even though we are faced with annoying human behavior daily, it is important that we still nurture the virtues in our hearts. Keep your spirits up for those of you who are struggling, enjoy your break, and happy watching. The movie opens with a scene where a father named Francois and his son, Emile, are stuck in traffic in the middle of the city. That day, Francois had an appointment with a doctor treating his ailing wife, Lana. After hours of being stuck in traffic, Emile felt bored and decided to leave the car and abandon his intention to accompany his father. However, Francois quickly stopped Emile and emphasized that his mother's recovery was the most important thing in the world. At that moment, the ambulance near them suddenly shook quite violently, and then out came a half-bird man who began to attack the health workers. The birdman then approached Emile and Francois, but to their luck, the half-bird man did not attack them and chose to flee the scene. Despite the absurdity of this incident, the people around them didn't seem to panic as they were used to the experience of seeing humans mutate into animals. Emile and Francois finally arrived at the hospital and met with the doctor treating Lana. The doctor then explained to Francois that Lana would be taken to a shelter center to facilitate her healing process. From the doctor's explanation, it was discovered that Francois' wife was one of the victims who had contracted the mutant virus and was at the 70% stage towards its original mutagen form. It is important to note that the origin of the mutant virus in this movie is unclear, but it has been circulating for years. Francois and Emile then meet Lana, who is isolated in a room. Francois asks Emile to meet his mother, but Emile is traumatized by being scratched by his mother. Even so, Francois persuades Emile that Lana is still his mother. Eventually, Emile agrees and walks towards Lana, who now has a quite creepy form. The next morning, Francois and Emile decided to move to a village near the mutant shelter center to visit Lana anytime. They then lived in a small house on the forest's edge. The next day, Emile started attending his new school. During the introduction, quite a few students asked about Emile's origins, including a beautiful student named Nina.
Nina? Non mais c'est chelou, tu débarques comme ça à 2 mois de l'été, t'as fait un truc grave.
Mon père est cuisinier.
Et ta mère?
Unité professionnelle pour mon père.
Tes parents ils font quoi?
After school, Emile remembers to stop by his father's workplace. Francois is known to work as a cook in a cafe. In the evening, a sudden rainstorm knocks out the electricity in Francois' house. Emile suddenly saw a mutant figure when he accompanied his father to fix the switch. However, the mutant disappeared as soon as the lights came back on. The next day, as Emile and Francois were cleaning up the house from the fallen tree trunks caused by last night's rain, Francois suddenly received news that the vehicle carrying dozens of mutants, including Lana, to the shelter had an accident. Without hesitation, they immediately went to the scene of the accident. There, the police only managed to find one mutant body, and a policewoman named Julia told Francois that 40 mutants, including Lana, had escaped during the accident. Realizing this, Francois rushed home and put some clothes on a tree branch near his house to lure Lana's presence. A few days later, Emile was seen participating in a tug-of-war competition at school. In the competition, Emile was miraculously able to hold 5 people at once and managed to beat his opponent very easily. This made other students, including Victor, interested in Emile and invited him to a party. On the other hand, Emile realized something was wrong with him. He chooses to go home, and when he gets home, he is surprised that a small claw has started to grow on his finger. Without hesitation, Emile immediately pulled out the claw. However, his panic grew when he discovered that his spine had also changed. Emile was frightened and panicked because it showed that he had contracted the same hybrid mutagen virus as his mother. Meanwhile, Francois, who was shopping for meat at the supermarket, accidentally met Julia. Julia promised Francois that the police would find his wife soon. At the same time, there was a sudden commotion at the fish shopping center. They immediately ran there and found an octopus mutant who was caught stealing fish. Fortunately, Julia managed to catch the mutant. Meanwhile, Francois accidentally met a mutant pangolin boy hiding under the table. However, Francois felt sorry for him and chose not to report him. Francois invited Emile to look for Lana in the forest the next day. However, Emile asked his father to look for his mother in the morning because he wanted to go to his friend's party that day. Emile then went to his friend's birthday party. Having consumed too much alcohol, he got very drunk and started to show his animalistic nature. Half-conscious and afraid that his friends would suspect him, Emile left and went into the forest. The next morning, Emile was confused as he miraculously woke up by the lake. Not only that, when he was about to take a shower at home, he also found a bird feather stuck in his mouth. It can be concluded that last night, while in a drunken state, Emile accidentally ate a bird. After finishing his bath, Emile was invited by his father to look for his mother in the forest. When they arrived, they began to walk through the bushes and shouted Lana's name. The two continued to look for Lana until nighttime, looking very persistent and unyielding. They also played Lana's favorite song in the car very loudly. Unfortunately, despite their best efforts, they still couldn't find Lana. As morning approached, Emile suddenly woke up because he heard a scraping sound from the grass. His curious pet dog then ran towards the forest, followed by Emile. A mutant bird suddenly attacked Emile, leaving Emile's hand injured. Not long after, Francois came and saved Emile. He then immediately took Emile to the hospital, but Emile refused because he was afraid that his father would find out that he had contracted the virus from the doctor who examined him. Francois, however, ignored Emile's refusal and continued his journey. Unfortunately, their journey was stopped by a group of policemen who were seen securing horses belonging to citizens. Julia, who happened to be there, then told Francois that last night there were mutants who slaughtered people's horses. Seeing Emile's wounds, Julia took them to the medical officer on duty there. Finally, the officer treated Emile's wound, and fortunately, the officer was unfamiliar with gene mutation. A few days later, when Emile attended science class, his hearing suddenly started to change. Now, his hearing became very sharp, like that of a wolf. Emile also began to feel disturbed by the sounds of the animals around him and unconsciously shouted in class. After school, Nina took Emile to her house. Upon arrival, Emile accidentally finds the carcass of a dead bird in Nina's refrigerator. Nina explained to Emile that she liked animals. Nina also claims that she disagrees with the government's decision to isolate mutants in a holding center. Hearing this, Emile began to fall in love with Nina. Not only that, but from then on, Emile also did not want to eat birds anymore and preferred to hunt fish. After returning from Nina's house, Emile immediately went hunting for fish. After getting quite a lot of fish, Emile went to the forest to share the fish with bird mutants and chameleon mutants. Emile then got acquainted with the bird mutant who had previously attacked him. The mutant was named Fix. At that time, Fix was practicing to fly. Realizing that Fix's body was covered in wounds from hitting the ground, Emile came up with the idea of taking Fix to a nearby swamp and asking him to practice there. Emile set to work removing wooden bollards from the swamp to make Fix safer. From then on, Fix began practicing flying, and although he often failed, he continued to practice so that he could fly like a bird. On his way home, Emile suddenly couldn't pedal his bicycle because his leg movements no longer functioned like a human. He threw his bike into the forest and preferred to walk to his father's workplace. Meanwhile, Francois was busy with his work. When he was about to take out the trash, he accidentally saw suspicious movements under his clothes. But before Francois could approach it, a mutant seal suddenly attacked him. Fortunately, his boss's wife quickly rescued him, and it was revealed that the mutant was once his boss's younger brother. The mutant then acted aggressively, making visitors run away in fear, while Francois chased after another mutant suspected to be Lana. Sure enough, when Francois stopped in the middle of the forest, he saw Lana, who had turned into a full-fledged wolf. After the chaos subsided, the police and military arrived to hunt down the mutants. Soon after, Emile arrived at the cafe and told his father that his bike had been stolen. Emile did his usual activities the next day, including attending school and training Fix to fly. He also changed the bandages on Fix's face, which looked worn out. In the evening, Francois invites Julia to the forest to find the mutants' whereabouts. Walking through the forest, they accidentally find Emile's bicycle in the bushes. Francois brought the bike back home and repaired it. As Francois washes his hands, he finds that the toilet is stuck. He unclogged the pipe, and to his surprise, he found several sharp nails, presumably Emile's, blocking the drain. From then on, Francois noticed something strange about his son's behavior lately. Shortly after, when Emile returned home, Francois immediately showed Emile the nails and forced him to pedal his bike. Of course, Emile refused and ran away, but Francois managed to catch him and tried calming him down by telling him everything would be fine later. From then on, Francois began to pay more attention to Emile. Starting from often warning Emile not to accentuate the development of his genetic mutation, Francois also told Emile to diligently shave the hair that began to grow all over his body. The next day, Emile went to the forest to meet Fix. Unfortunately, Fix had lost his human voice then and could only make bird sounds. Fix climbed a tree to show Emile he could fly like a bird. Elsewhere, Francois was seen being scolded by his boss because Emile didn't show up even though they were holding a harvest party in the village square that day. Francois then returned home and found Emile in the house. He forced Emile to cut his nails, but Emile refused, and a fight broke out between them. Even so, Francois seemed to love Emile very much. Ultimately, he couldn't bear to cut Emile's nails and chose to leave them alone. After that, he ordered Emile to head to the harvest party immediately. Upon arrival, Emile met Nina, and Nina took him to the cornfield area. There, Nina suddenly expressed her feelings for Emile. Knowing this, Emile is suddenly ambushed by Victor, who is jealous because he secretly has feelings for Nina. Victor then turns on an animal jamming sound device that causes Emile's ears to feel pain. Eventually, Victor learns that Emile is a mutant. Emile then attacked Victor and fled to the cornfields. There, he is chased by people carrying rifles, as well as Francois, who tries to save his son. In the middle of the chase, Emile is suddenly helped by Fix, who quickly kills one of the villagers, but when Fix flies towards the forest, he is shot and falls into the bushes. Emile also tried to help him, but Fix was finally unable to survive and died. Because the villagers were getting closer, Emile chose to go into the forest. The next morning, the government sent hundreds of police and military into the forest to hunt down the mutants. The frightened Emile continued to walk towards the deeper forest. Occasionally, he also stopped at the river to fish. In the evening, it rained very heavily. Fortunately, Emile managed to find a cave and slept there. The next day, when Emile woke up, he was surprised by the figure of his mother, who had now perfectly transformed into a wolf. Emile then came out of the cave and found that the place was a hiding place for hybrid mutants. A mutant pig, snake, goat, and many other animals existed. However, the place was soon invaded by military forces. They finally managed to capture all the hybrid mutants, including Lana and Emile, but not the chameleon mutants, who managed to escape thanks to their ability to camouflage. Francois and Julia then went to the police station where Emile was. Emile is asked to sign an agreement to move to a shelter center. When Emile let out his aggression, the officer showed his rudeness. Seeing this, Francois immediately hit the officer and left the office while carrying the license he had successfully falsified. On the way, Emile asked his father to visit him often at the shelter. Francois cried and revealed that he would not take Emile there but would take him and release him into the wild. Emile is very happy, and the two share a happy moment when their family is still complete with Lana. It didn't take long for a police car to catch up with them from behind. Seeing this, Francois immediately stepped on the gas towards the forest path. After they were far from the police, he asked Emile to run as fast as possible towards the forest. Emile then ran into the forest and finally lived freely in the wild. And the movie ended.